The first inequality I want to look at today is the idea of education inequality. And of course, it's not escaping me that we have examples of this education inequality in our classroom, in our school. We are a school that is incredibly diverse, and we have a lot of people from BAME communities within the school. Many of you watching this right now are from BAME communities. So I need to kind of address that at the top and to consider that. And remember that these inequalities, when we're talking about them, we're talking about groups in general. We're not talking about individual specifics, people's circumstances. But if you do feel like any of these do apply to you, you want to talk about it more, please do get in touch. Or if you feel uncomfortable discussing these issues, then let me know. You know, I don't want to make you feel uncomfortable. But let's start thinking about, in general, the education inequalities between people from ethnic minority backgrounds and white people in the UK. Historically, we've kind of spoken about this a little bit before, people from BAME communities have had poorer educational outcomes than white British people. Now, over time, that's been improving, but not equally across all ethnic minority groups. So according to the most recent census, remember that's 2011 though, so it's quite a long time ago, people of Pakistani, Bangladeshi and Caribbean descent are less likely than white British people to have degree level qualifications, significantly less likely. And over 60% of white Gypsy Irish traveller people have no qualifications whatsoever, compared to just 24% of white British people. So we can see that when we look at degree qualifications, like the actual physical qualifications, we can see that there are huge disparities between people from BAME communities and white British people. But there's also inequality in terms of the experience that people have through education. There are clear inequalities in Britain's schools. Black people of Caribbean descent are 3 times more likely to be excluded than white boys. And between a quarter and a third of all Muslim women in the UK have no qualifications whatsoever. So there's a clear disparity there in terms of the experience that young people have at school, in terms of at university, and also in terms of the qualifications that they achieve at the end of it. Now, collectivists would argue that this difference in education is due to, guess what, systemic inequality. Some recent changes to education have really increased this problem. For example, you used to be able to get grants in order to help you go to university. Essentially, that was a sum of money that was given to you. It wasn't a loan, it was given to you to help you pay for university. Those have been got rid of, and they've been replaced by loans. And that has disproportionately affected people from BAME backgrounds. They are much more likely to have less money, because we know that BAME people are more likely to be living in poverty, and they're less able to take on debt. So if you're in a situation where rather than receiving a grant, you have to think about taking on a loan, then that's going to affect your decision about whether or not you go to university. Recent studies have also shown that ethnic minority applicants to university are less likely to receive offers. So even when they have the same grades as their white counterparts, we know that people from BAME backgrounds are just less likely to actually get university offers. So we can see that there's a disparity in terms of the qualifications that people from BAME backgrounds have, in terms of the experience they have at school and at university, and also on their chances of even getting to university in the first place. We know also that BAME people, of course, are much more likely to experience racial bias and have negative experiences because of that at school and at university. And we're going to talk a little bit more about that in the next section. This argument, however, is opposed by individualists who argue that these numbers are changing, that it's no longer the sort of historical pattern of BAME people performing much worse than white students, and actually these numbers are changing. And in many ethnic minority groups, educational outcomes are better than white British people's. So Chinese, Indian and Black African people are all more likely on average to have degree level qualifications than white British people. Now this might seem like, oh well, that's a good thing, you know, and things are changing in terms of they are earning these degrees in the UK, and that inequality is growing smaller. But actually, that's not the case. The main reason for this is that the UK has really strict immigration requirements. In order to come into the country, immigrants need to have way more advanced educational and wealth qualifications than the average British person. So in order to be granted entry to the country, and more importantly, leave to remain, the right to stay in the country, you have to be earning a huge amount of money, and you also need to have some quite advanced educational qualifications. So this is totally messing with the data. The data is saying that Chinese, Indian and Black African people are more likely to have degree level qualifications than white British people, but that's because they already got them somewhere else and then came here to the UK. So this is not because the UK is doing a better job of providing quality education to these people. It's because it's basically not letting people without degree level qualifications into the UK. So the data is utterly skewed. If we just consider British born or British educated BAME people, there are still enormous inequalities.